Your worst financial decisions. We all make mistakes, some small, some large, others just silly. As time passes by, we believe we have healed, but the memories and guilt of the past losses crop up. Let's get it off our chest in public. What are the worst financial decisions you made which caused you to lose money badly? Buying a 5-year-old Audi S5. It had a full Audi service history, and looked and drove great. Needed its ECM replaced once, TCM replaced twice, all engine mounts, multiple door locks, various electrical niggles, etc. etc. Car cost me $55,000. Spent $28,000 on servicing over 3 years. Sold it for $35,000. Lost $48,000 in 3 years on a car that spent 95 of its life sitting in a garage. Now have a Mazda 3 that has given me 0 issues in 5 years and is stuck in traffic just like that POS Audi. In my mid-30s I used our $250,000 life savings to start a business manufacturing a product I had designed, moved to Hong Kong and worked in Shenzhen. Things didn't work out for various reasons and we moved back to AUS 6 years later, broke. Should have just bought the eastern suburbs apartment in Sydney and sat on my ass. Could have retired now 10 years later. Good life experience though. Just simply buying too much shit and not prioritizing saving. Now when I want to build up a nest egg I have tons of clothes and bags that were very expensive that I can't offload. Getting into Magic the Gathering. Got pressured by parents into going to uni after finishing high school. Picked a degree I had no interest in, and dropped out after 2 years. Incurring HECS debt and not getting a degree out of it. Was a pretty expensive waste of time. Back when I started investing, I was also subbed to our Wall Street bets. The story practically writes itself. Chose to do an initial trial investment in the share market to see what it is like in 2008. Reached the reasonable conclusion that me buying shares causes the entire market to go into crisis, and stayed away ever since. Just starting to get invested again now, so expect the next financial crisis shortly. Taking advice from parents. And staying in a job for about 3 years too long. Working in London on $1 million salary and throwing it all in because I missed surfing and the beach, and 20 years later still am yet to get a board and paddle out. Not being born into a rich family. Don't know how I'll ever financially recover from this. Should have bought a house in 2008 instead of being in grade 3. Early in my 20s buying an expensive car with a loan. In my late 30s, buying a new not off-plan apartment. The most recent sale in the building was for $75,000 less than the owner paid for it a year before I bought mine. I was hoping to sell mine next year, so yeah, likely to lose a lot of money out of that. Taking most of my 20s to travel, try different careers and follow my passions. I'm probably about 5 years behind where I'd be in terms of income if I just knuckled down, and my HECS debt would certainly be a lot lower if not paid off. So from a strictly financial perspective it was a mistake. Wouldn't change it though, for non-financial reasons. I'd be miserable if I stuck it out in my first career. Buying an expensive relatively speaking car using debt at 19 years old. Selling my house and moving to Australia. I was a homeowner in the UK at 25 and now I'm renting in NSW at 35. The estimated value of my old home is now £300,000. I paid £200,000 for it in 2015 and sold for £225,000 in 2017. I spent all of the gains on the visa and moving costs. I was a bit all over the place back then. We had a few deaths in the family which had me shaken, and I became determined to emigrate after Brexit happened. Looking back now, that decision has cost a lot of money. I'm still trying to get my net worth back to where I was in 2017. Marrying a narcissist. Bought a franchise for $180,000 in Queensland 15 years ago. Big mistake. The franchisor was a con man. All the franchisees were close to going broke because of his decisions, costs, etc. The product was actually garbage and the customer comebacks never stopped. Do not buy a franchise. Do not trust anyone. Bounced back from it, but it was a costly mistake. Got a small inheritance, $15,000 or so, from a grandparent in my very early 20s. Sensibly decided to invest it all in Vanguard index funds in 2007. Panic sold it all at the lowest lows of the GFC in 2008-2009. Stupid. Buying an investment property in regional NSW when I could have bought in Sydney. Worked on the assumption, valid at the time, that both would appreciate at roughly the same rate. Regional value has increased by, maybe, 60 since, but Sydney by 125 in the same time. Think of all that CGT I'll save. In uni I paid top dollar for a 20-year-old motorbike that was supposedly in excellent condition. I'll never forget the seller not even bothering to count the cash, he just wanted to see it gone. The bike cut out on the ride home. 12 months later, 2 tow trucks, and too many headaches to count, I sold it for half of what I bought it for. Fortunately we're only talking about a $5,000 bike, but lesson learned nevertheless. Didn't buy a Porsche and rented for 20 years. Sold CSL for a small profit when they were around $31. Got impatient because the share price didn't do much for a year. Not buying a 4-bedroom house and land package in Western Sydney because I thought $500K was overpriced. Starting a degree and not finishing it before beginning a new one. Hex debt is a bitch. Buying the wrong first house. Had to pay LMI as we bought a far too expensive house. Ended up feeling like slaves due to high mortgage and heaps of maintenance upkeep. House also had structural damp issues which would have cost tens of thousands to rectify. We ended up selling it 3 years later. Market had gone up some, but we still lost around $30,000 when factoring in buying vs selling costs. Got a 7-year loan, 14.97, for a car back in 2013. The bank, St. George, is currently in a class action lawsuit over this. Got a text from the law firm asking me to register for compensation. Given that one of the lead plaintiffs had a loan for 12, I'm very keen to see what sort of compensation I have coming my way. Growing up with poor, financially illiterate parents and not using any of the money I made in my early 20s wisely. Buying my POS Hyundai runaround with no debt was the best thing I did financially back then. Yes, stripping is a great way to pay rent when you don't want to work full-time and or have no idea what you want to do for a living, but nobody exactly tells you, hey, you should probably save some of this money or you're responsible for paying into your own super. You should really do that. Started my super from scratch at age 26, I don't recommend doing that. Not being born into generational wealth. Jokes aside, I wish I made more of an effort to find work after uni. Took me many years to find a job related to my degree, so I put it off. Worked casually and traveled quite a bit before starting with an entry-level role at my current company. Taking 7 years to do an undergrad and a $60,000 HECS to boot. Worked in that field for 4 years, now I'm in a different field, adding more to my HECS. Sharing finances with a significant other. My ex-boyfriend financially abused me, I paid everything, he contributed nothing. He got hold of my credit card details and gambled thousands of dollars. I had to get loans to consolidate debt that I hadn't incurred but was in my name. For years later I am finally debt-free and saving for an apartment. Lesson learnt: I earn my own money, no one accesses it apart from me. And where do I start? Bought a house at the 2017 peak. Bought a house at the 2022 peak. Bought a pharmacy just before 60-day dispensing hit. Losing $600 on the pokies and a bag the other night. Not having a budget understanding of what I can afford. That, and getting a credit card. I had a small credit card, I think maybe under $3,000. My head was in the sand about the holistic view of my finances. I rented places that were more than I could afford, my job cost me far more than it should have in driving and travel expenses, I didn't save nearly as much as I should have. The day I sat down and wrote out my weekly, monthly, annual expenses and income was the turning point.